Wilson Morales from Black Women TV talking to Sir Lenny Henry and Rochelle. Neil, is it now or Neil?
Neil.
Neil.
Like the name Rochelle. Yeah. Oh,
everybody has different ways of pronouncing things, but here we are talking about Three Little Birds. Lenny, obviously, you know, how fascinating is it to have your story told on the screen and to you participate in it?
It's extraordinary. Like all authors, I used some of my real life story, but also did a lot of research. I was mentored by Russell T Davies, who's having a bravura run on Doctor Who at the moment, the Doctor Who reboot with Ncuti Gatwa. And he basically encouraged me to write from my feelings and to lean into the kind of true story of my family. And although I was reticent at times to tell everything, I did a lot of research, I read a lot of books, watched a lot of documentaries. In the end, I did want people to understand what it was like for people to come to Britain in the 50s and walk cold streets and to see signs in the windows of the boarding houses that said no blacks, no Irish, no dogs. And this feeling of rejection because of the way you looked. And we have British passports, and it was a shock to arrive in this country in 1957 and to have people go, why are you here? What are you doing here? Why are you taking our jobs? All of that stuff. And my mom had to say, I'm a British citizen. I've got a passport. I grew up, I learned the British kings and queens. I know about British geography. I learned that stuff at school. Why don't you know about us? So Three Little Birds is partly that. I was also inspired by August Wilson's Century Cycle. You know, I acted in Fences and in King Hedley II. And I thought what August Wilson was trying to do was tell the Black American history in the 20th century. And Three Little Birds is my attempt to begin, in a way, a delineation of our story in this country and what we brought to this country. So I hope people can relate to it.
And Rochelle, you're playing the role of Leah. You know, obviously every female character here has a different story. You know, coming into this, how did you want to play Leah outside of the script that Lenny put together?
How did I? Sorry.
How did you want to play the role outside of the script in terms of embodying the character?
Oh, in terms of, well, Lenny was very, very generous with me. He allowed me to just go with it and run with it. So for me, it was just about telling the truth and being as authentic as I possibly could in each given moment, making sure that I did my research so I could check my blind spots. You know, I'm not a woman in the 1950s. The way the world was run there, the mentality of people during that time is different to how they are now. So I always make sure I check my blind spots. And then it was just getting out of my own way, you know, because it is a big deal. It is Sir Lenny Henry, and to play a character inspired by her mum, his mum. Also, I wanted to be able to look my family in the eye. You know, it's my family story. I couldn't F it up and expect to be invited back home for Christmas. So it felt very, very important. It felt like an honor to play, and just telling the truth, getting out of my own way, and realizing the gift that I was given with the role.
And before I let you go, Lenny, you know, how I wouldn't say bad was Jamaica that people had to leave to go to England, but why do you think people wanted to immigrate to another country, knowing the the racial issues they would have to face?
Well, I genuinely believe it because Jamaica was a British colony. People assumed they would arrive in Britain and be met with open arms, and that the streets were paved with gold, and then everything would be hunky-dory. And when they arrived, people didn't even know where Jamaica was. People said to my mom, what part of Africa is that? You know, kids chased my mom down the street and asked her where her tail was. It was that basic in this country. You know, there were people who were up in arms. They didn't want to work alongside Black people, even though we'd been invited to come to this country on the Windrush to help rebuild the country after the war. So it's a real humbling thing to read these stories about all of these people who came here and had to overcome racism and patriarchy and sexism and make a new life. And the key thing was this idea of making allies, becoming friends, trying to find a way through this without making too many enemies. And I think my mom particularly was very good at that. She did 3 jobs. These are all stories you would have heard. My mom worked very hard to make our lives in this country happen. And I salute it. And this is basically my tribute to those women and the men who came to Britain, a new country, and decided to find a different and better future for themselves. Anybody who loves fresh off the boat, Godfather 2, Moscow on the Hudson, Avalon, will resonate with the story of these people moving from this country to that country and going, oh, it's not the way I thought it was going to be. And I think that if it can convey those feelings, then I've done a good job.
Congrats on the series. Congrats on your performance. Let's keep it going. I'm glad it's going to be shown so that a lot more people can see it. Take care of yourselves. Have a good one.
Thank you very, very much.
Wilson Morales from Black Women TV. Hello, folks. How are you?
Hey, Wilson. Really good to see you, man. Thank you for making the time.
Yeah, I've started watching the series and I'm like, okay, all of a sudden in the last few months, I would say between Black Cake and this and the upcoming Bob Marley movie, all of a sudden Jamaica's on the spotlight.
Amen. Amen.
That's
right.
We're getting all these stories. So in terms of the roles you're playing, how did you want to play it outside of what the script called for that you wanted to make it your own? Yasmin?
Yeah. It was like the quirks of the character that actually, unless you were an extremist like my parents and they watched it about sort of 4 times, I was so sure, because actually one of my biggest fears when trying to channel Hosanna was that there was this close connection of her becoming gimmicky and this quintessential Christian, which actually I stemmed away from because it just would have done her a disservice. Before she's Christian, she's a Black woman. Before she's Black woman, she's human. And so there were loads of quirks that I wanted to add to the character that may or may have been picked up, may or may not have been picked up, but it needed to remain consistent from episode 1 all the way to episode 7. Whether it's a piercing of the lips or the way she would kind of flinch at certain things, because how dare you put a cup down without the rimming. And so there were loads of different quirks that I wanted to kind of make her own. And that was just sort of through character style and choice. But then also I wanted to replicate the women that raised me growing up. And they're just full of tenacity and love and wit, and that you can't bring anything past them too tough because they're going to have something to say to you, and then they'll close it up with a lovely Bible verse, So these were things that I wanted to replicate. And so, yes, I hope I've answered the question.
And what about you, Saffron? When you think of Chantrelle, she's firecracker, but there's some humanity in there that comes out that's like, okay, not everything's all that it seems to be.
Absolutely. And I think that's what really what I celebrate in her, because as an effort to make her my own, right? Like, what I really enjoyed about the part is that Sir Lenny encouraged us to have so much liberty with what we brought, and like instilled in us this idea that like, you've got the part, you made it, you are them, run with it, run with it. And I think with Chantrelle, of course, like there's this really interesting element about like her physicality, her visual essence, brings in, particularly to do with Jamaica and everything like that, that we touch upon colorism, which I think is a really important conversation. So like, what I didn't want for her is just to come across as this like spoilt brat, or like not without her humanity. I'm aware of her, like I didn't want her to just be this like sex symbol or like homage to like kind of the male gaze. I didn't want that at all, because there's I do believe that like she developed these elements as coping mechanisms. She worked out how to play the game and she plays it well, but it doesn't stop her having innate love for her family. It doesn't stop her having innate love for herself and what she wants in life. And it's only through life that tells her, no, you can't have this, because she has every right to be confident. She has every right to be in her sensuality. And I respect the fact that she was doing it at a time which was a bit out of question or out of the ordinary for some Jamaican women. Me have to say the women in my family reflect more Leah and Hosanna, you know what I'm saying? So for me, I wanted to be able to like run with her humor, run with her confidence, while still allowing her intelligence and her vulnerability and her softness,
And then at the end of the day, this ensemble works well together. How was it on the set? For a lot of you, it's new, being on a TV series, there's a lot more to do than you've previously done. How was the setting like that Sir Henry put together and all you guys working together?
Yeah, I'll be quick because I know you've got one there. The real connections for me were made Offset. I think when I was in set, and it's amazing if we get a season 2, here we are, or it just because I was a lot of the time I was learning and I was watching, and both Saffron and Rochelle were wonderful women to mimic and to kind of steal gems from, because they're just brilliant. But I think a lot of my relationships till this day were made from sort of the downtimes that we got if we were eating lunch, or if we had sort of try-ons. I can't stress enough the support system that came from holistically the women that were behind us, the people that were doing our hair and makeup, the lighting, the sound. It was just one big family. And so when I was on set, I was scared. I wanted to do the best I could, but offset were when all my sort of I was honing all those relationships and sharpening them. So yeah.
You guys did well. Congratulations. Let us hope for season 2. Let's make it happen. Glad everybody gets to see it. Not only have they seen it in the UK, but they'll see it here in the States. Wherever you guys are at, take care and stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
For making the time.